Hello, Husker fans. Back again for the Pick Six podcast. This is the Nebraska Wrap edition, where we're both on the precipice of getting out for vacation. Tom Shatel and I. Evan, great work during the College World Series. He's getting a deserved break after basically covering college baseball nonstop without a break for 6 weeks. So kudos to him. He covered first Nebraska, then the Big Ten tournament, then Nebraska again, and then the College World Series. Tom covered it all the way too. And so we're happy to have him here. We're going to wrap up the Nebraska Athletics season, talk a little bit of Matt Rhule, and then at the end I'll talk a little recruiting for a minute. Tom can add anything he likes. Tom, it's late June. It feels like late June. How are you doing?
Yep. Yep. It's time to wrap it up and take a little break and then come back in July and do it again.
We're basically 1 month from the start of Nebraska football's training camp. I anticipate Nebraska starting. Oh, they're going to start doing stuff basically on the 27th, 28th of July. They go to media days, I think on the 23rd. And then I think their opening press conference for training camp is like the 29th. And so we're basically 1 month out from that. We're a month and a half from volleyball training camp, but we're only 1 month from volleyball media days, and we're a month and a half from the Nebraska soccer season starting. So we have a little bit of time, and sports writers always try to get out in July, and that'll be true of Tom and I. So we're going to wrap up the 2023-2024 Nebraska athletics season. We'll start with this. Nebraska finished 22nd, the Directors' Cup. Pretty good finish. Best finish they've had since 2009, 2010. And in 2009, they had a pretty damn good football team that year. They didn't have that this year. They missed the bowl for the seventh straight season, but there were a lot of other sports that were really good. And I wanted to ask you, Tom, just as you think about the stories that you really enjoyed over the previous 10 months, which really jumped out to you?
Volleyball all the way to the end. Incredible run. Thought they didn't have a great championship match. But they all those freshmen and just the whole season was sort of a magical ride. Hoiberg's bunch, making the tournament, going to Memphis, didn't end well, but again, that was a fun ride. Women's basketball going to the Big Ten tournament title game, making the tournament, and baseball winning the Big Ten tournament. Those were all big highlights.
I the volleyball thing, I say this quite often, a couple times a week. I'm serious. I'll get the video out of the last point from volleyball day with they're in the stadium and the whole thing. I'll be like, look at this. And it is. It's only grown. I've only grown in my appreciation for being there that night. I didn't do anything. You wrote a column, a great column. Evan had worked all day. I was there and whatever. But I was so glad I was there.
Yeah.
That was a really cool day. Um, and that program's terrific. I mean, just a terrific program, and they're good every year. I mean, so their run to the national title match, while great, was somewhat expected, I think. But this year in basketball, man, that was pretty sweet. Um, I was not in Memphis for the first 10 minutes of that NCAA tournament game. You were. Um, what do you remember about just the opening 10 minutes? They lose the game, but man, those opening 10 minutes and the fans and all that.
Yeah, it was unlike any I've been to almost all the Nebraska tournament games except two of them, and it was unlike any of them because of the fans. It was sort of a home game, and they had never had that before. And then A&M started making shots, and they were off to the races. But for the first 10 minutes or so of that game, it was like, hey, we might see something tonight because the fans are behind them, and it felt like it was going to be their night. And then reality set in, and but uh, you still felt like it wasn't just another tournament game for Nebraska. It felt like that they're gonna be back, and the, the, they're always going to retool the roster with Fred, and they'll probably learn some things, it felt more like a beginning to me than the end. So
I felt the same way, and I went to a couple games in person, so I was there for the Purdue game when they stormed the court, and that was cool. I mean, it was a unique night because there weren't that many people there because the weather was bad, and I don't know, the students weren't there really, but that was fun. And I went to a couple of other games, and then I watched some other games on TV, and I'm thinking to myself as I'm sitting on the couch, the Friday before the NCAA tournament. They're beating Indiana by 30. And I'm like, I'm sitting on a couch right now watching Nebraska basketball beat Indiana by 30 points and just laughing at all the shots Nebraska's hitting. And I'm like, I don't know if Fred Hoiberg's gonna like be get this team to, the Sweet 16, but he's done something to create that moment. Because I don't, that was a heck of a moment. And so there's real momentum there. And then for the women's basketball team, I used to cover the women's basketball program, obviously, for many years with Connie and then Amy. And I've seen a lot of memorable games. I've never seen a basketball game like the one they played against Caitlin Clark on Super Bowl Sunday. Never. Not a women's basketball game in Nebraska. And it was like a state fair or a state tournament game where actually half the crowd were Iowa fans. They were.
mm-hmm.
And half of them were Nebraska fans. And Nebraska won that game in an incredible atmosphere. And I was like, it feels like a beginning for that program too. It was a pretty great winter for hoops, wasn't it?
Right. It was which is just a lot of highlights all the way through the year of and a lot of sports, single games, just a lot of a good year for a lot of memories. Especially the home games. Just some felt like Nebraska fans didn't always get a championship, but they had a year that I'll never forget in a lot of ways. That they got to witness something special up front.
Did you ever think Trev Alberts would leave Nebraska as athletic director?
No, I thought he would probably slide off into maybe the corporate world, or go retire in South Carolina. After Matt Rhule got it going, and he just had everything was set, and no, I'm still shocked. I mean, he still didn't look right wearing that tight maroon polo last week at the World Series, and now he's getting hammered by A&M fans, and I just wonder if he thinks, "Wow, did I make the right move here?" Because uh, Nebraska fans get loud, but it's like it's just a different level at A&M. When they get pissed, and you know,
Right.
I mean, things happen. Like they kept Mark Stoops from getting a football job because they weren't going to take it, and now they're mad about the baseball, and I don't see how he can recover from this. There's nobody out there to hire, whether it's the guy at Kentucky or whatever, who is going to make up for this. Losing your coach, seemingly with the thing had been going on for a while, at least, some while they've been talking, and almost like and Trev and his school was flat-footed, and so there's nobody really, and they lose him to Texas of all people. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think he's he's got a reality check pretty quick there. So Nebraska made a really nice recovery. I think
Yeah, I
Troy
agree.
Dannen's a very good fit, and but we see how important these ADs are to coaches. Schwarzenegger went to Texas because of his former boss. So yeah, Troy Dannen while Matt Rhule is here, hopefully for a long time, um, the best thing he can do, yeah, Matt Rhule is going to get whatever he wants, but I think what would be more valuable is a good relationship, good, honest relationship with the AD, where they, and you can't force it. You're either going to connect or you're not, but they seem to be a couple of like-minded guys. So
Yes.
who could sit around in the office or around a bonfire on some, a donor golf trip with a couple of drinks and just talk
Yes.
about stuff, about family and life. And um, that may be the magic in Troy Dannen. And he's such a regular guy that all these people that have known him for 30 years are all regular people. And that's invaluable, because coaches can snuff out if you're a fake, and if you're just trying to kiss their butt. And I think Troy's got a regular guy component, a dynamic that will serve him well.
I couldn't agree with that more. The thing about that, it was easy transition. I agree. Rhule and Dannen had a deeper relationship than Rhule and Trev did. And as things have progressed over the last year and a half, I've come to kind of sense that like Rhule liked Trev, but he loved Ted Carter, and
Mm-hmm.
Ted left. And I think Troy Dannen in some ways is sort of in between those two roles. Like Troy's just the kind of guy that Matt can jive with. I completely agree. Like if Troy and Matt were on a sales team and they had to go to like Dallas and they had to do damage in the sales team, you'd send Troy
Yeah,
and Matt. Like those are the two guys you want
I,
sitting with the donors. Exactly.
I mean, this is not bash Trev time, but
No.
he always wore the suit. It always felt like he was on, and never let his hair down, and could be like the regular guy. He was always Trev, you know, and I think Rhule is more the other way. Um,
Yes.
he's Matt,
He
he's not.
switches into Matt at the podium during press conferences sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, Matt Rule's his whole persona is not Nick Saban walk into the room and everybody hushes. It's, oh, here he comes, and everybody's he grabs his pop, Diet Pepsi, and he's hanging out, and he's got this regular guy component himself,
Yes.
and it's so I think that bodes well. I'm not sure. Again, uh, I think Rhule and uh, uh, Trev got along fine,
They
but
did.
there's just more of I think a chance for a, a good connection, maybe a meaningful connection. I think between between Troy Dannen
Yeah,
and Rhule right now. So um yeah, so whatever that means, I don't know, but
for sure.
yeah, what an interesting year. If you had to line it all up, probably the most boring thing was football, and it wasn't always boring. But you know, were there games we're going to remember football? Yeah, opener maybe. Colorado,
Colorado.
you try to forget it. Um, but I think Dylan Raiola might be the big memory. So
Yep.
um, yeah, it was one of those years where a lot happened, and I mean, just little, the volleyball night and all the court stormings and just a lot of things that might happen once every 4 or 5 years to seem to happen all at once.
Hmm. That's a good
And
point.
then Trev Alberts leaving in the middle of the night. So
That's right. That was
another memory. You know, but
no,
it's never
that guy.
dull.
No, it's Nebraska football would be wise to have a dull season. And a dull season meaning they win 7 or 8 games and everybody kind of calms down and isn't trying to whatever.
Yeah.
That would be good. But yeah, like I think there's so many circumstances. I remember when it went from Sean Eichhorst to Bill Moose, and that was like flipping a light on. And mostly that was good, but then like he was saying stuff that writing checks that the program could cash with fans and stuff. And so and then it went from Moose to Trev, and that was really drastic. And Trev and Troy are not similar necessarily in some ways, but it just feels like it's been very smooth. And Trev deserves some credit for that. I think he resolved some of the issues within the athletic department and cleaned up some issues that Troy didn't have to address. Now Troy had to come in and maybe work on the collective stuff a little bit, but that's something he's perfectly suited to do. On to Rhule for a second. The the way that you put that of just that he's just mad and he's not. You're totally right. There was a moment during his press conference last week where again, I understand what he's saying when he's comparing Nebraska and Ohio State recruiting. That's the kind of thing that Big Ten rivals or whatever, Iowa fans, they're gonna take that, they're gonna cut that up and be like, what are you talking about? I was curious, like what you thought of that, of his press conference, which had a lot of good stuff in it, but just his support staff's conversations and that comment. Like how do you think people may have received the comment that he made about Nebraska and Ohio State recruiting?
Oh, I don't know if it's going to stop traffic. I don't know that it's going to turn heads. I took it as yeah, he's in a hurry to get there, but he's also a builder who's based on patience. But you're not there yet. You have to earn that reputation of, hey, we recruit. I think people that run the Big Ten understand Nebraska has recruited a lot of great players in the last 10 years. They've had talent, but they haven't had as a lot of blocking and a lot of tackling, and a lot of discipline. And that's the kind of players you want to be remembered for, or you want to be known for in Nebraska, is the discipline,
Mm-hmm.
the consistency, not the fact that you know how to recruit. I mean, we've had Bill Callahan, we've had so on and so forth. Yeah, they've had these guys. Not a lot of NFL players lately, but over the years, they've had uh, a lot of quality players, guys who were high level, but
Mm-hmm.
they didn't have the guys who could make plays and go win games and without you know uh, slipping on the banana peel. There's always a banana peel. Get rid of the peels. So yeah, I don't think that really stopped anything in the Big Ten. It probably just yeah, you want to be treated like Ohio State. Well, you got to go earn that. But again, I don't think anybody's in the Big Ten's worried about talent. They're worried about how are we going to win games by not screwing up. How are we gonna make Nebraska lose by being Nebraska? So yeah, I didn't think it was that big of a deal. But it was interesting. Rhule wants to be treated like Ohio State. Well, earn it. And I think he obviously knows that.
Well, the coach at Ohio State is on a hotter seat right now than Matt Rhule, which will tell you something. Like, if that guy
Well,
loses 2 games this year in the regular season, he may not have a job next year.
well, I'm really interested, and I'll probably write about this at some point. The Big Ten is like a 14-year-old kid. It's about to go through some life changes, and
Yeah.
I'm not so sure. I mean, Ohio State, Michigan. I mean, that's the rivalry that decides jobs. It ain't going to be, does Ohio State make the playoff, whatever. He's got to beat Michigan. He's in trouble because he hasn't beaten Michigan.
Right.
That's how that thing ebbs and flows. And it's a miracle John Cooper kept his job that long. And he kept it for over a decade. He could be Michigan. He still kept his job because he beat everybody else. But um, I'm just saying that what's going to happen. Excuse me, I still have the gunk. What's going to happen when Ohio State, Michigan isn't the end all be all every year for the league? What's going to happen when other people win the Big Ten? And does that make the Ohio State, Michigan Ohio State, Michigan game not as big? Well, I'm sure for those two, it'll always be the biggest thing ever. But I'm just kind of curious to see how this league changes. And if you're talking about adding more, which they are, somebody's talking about it. You know, Florida State, Clemson, whatever, Carolina, adding more, then it becomes more watered down. The Big Ten is not going to be the Big Ten as we knew it, as they knew it. And it's going to be interesting to see how all that stuff changes. Arguably this year's biggest game, Ohio State at Oregon in October, not at the end of November.
Yep.
The thing at the end of November may be a moot point by then. It'll never be a moot point to them. So yeah, Ryan Day is going to be he's hot seat because he can't beat Michigan right now. But if he turns that around, which he's going to have a hell of a chance to do this year, then all will be well.
It's going to
And
be
that's just
pretty.
my
Yeah, you're
take on
right.
it.
It will be. It's going to be an interesting year watching the Big Ten for sure. I think there's a lot of attention on Oregon. There should be. Oregon is a good program, and there should be a lot of attention. Ironically, Washington was the best of the four last year, and nobody thinks Washington's going to be any good in the upcoming year. Maybe 6-6, but they darn near won the national title. So there's going to be a lot of interest and intrigue and those four teams joining. I'm looking forward to it. Certainly looking forward to Nebraska playing USC and UCLA in the same year. I think that's going to be a lot of fun. Just because, hey, who doesn't want to see those helmets, and those uniforms and all those things. So I guess I'm a little more lukewarm on Oregon and Washington, but the LA stuff is going to be really good. In terms of just what you heard from their sort of support staff, did anything jump out at you over the last month or so about what they said about Rhule or what they said about their roles?
Not really. Just I just enjoy hearing from those people. I think it's what they do is very good. There's a nonstop hunger for information around here, and a big media corps eager to give it to people and take advantage of it. Show the program. And I really feel like Rhule by doing that is not only you know opening windows into that new giant complex and but showing willingness to be okay, here's who we are. We want you to know who we are. I think parents and recruits like that. Well, what about parents of transfers? What do parents of transfers think? Nobody ever goes into the living room of a parents of a transfer, I guess. But unless they're bringing their 1890 rep with them. But I feel like that Rhule had a press conference last week in the middle of June, which is unheard of. Tom Osborne would have, I don't know what he would have done if he had to do that. He probably would have stopped coaching or something if he knew he had to do a press conference in June. But there's a genius behind that, I think, in that you're telling players, the Rhule is always out there. He's always, the presence is there. You
It
know,
is.
everything here is big, guys, and we talk year round. I'm here year round. I'm always here. I'm always out there. You know where I'm going to be. I'm making this program better, and you know, we do press conferences after camps. That's how big this thing is. I mean, there's a message there, kind of subliminal. It's not like uh, he's shouting it at you, but if you're paying attention and you're high school kid, you're going, there's always quotes, there's always a video, there's always something on social media. But I really like the fact that we get to meet the staff and know what they do specifically. It's good information. It's just good to talk to people. Um, and you see a big long list of people on the staff, and you get to meet them. There's a face to that job. There's a face to this and that, and they're all normal faces, regular people. I just enjoy the whole thing. It's we could talk about tight ends and the personnel groups and all that stuff, X's and O's, later. But right now, let's find out about how the thing works. So, yeah, it's good.
I liked it. I liked it too. We got to see a little bit of the building, which was neat, and you just kind of get a sense of how everybody works together. Their strength coach is a interesting guy. He's very uh, he's kind of calm. Like
Mhm.
a lot of strength coaches come through, and you're like, did you just kind of like walk off the set of like a war movie? you know, but Corey Campbell has just I kind of like the way that he comes at it. He's intense, but he isn't I don't know, a caricature. He's
Yeah,
and he's young. Like he's like, I don't know, he just played it in Georgia. He played for Georgia against Nebraska in that Tax Slayer Bowl that we were at. So he's like 31 or 32. And he comes off in a way that seems relatable to the athletes as opposed to, I don't know, somebody that was in Game of Thrones or something.
yeah. I mean, the first strength coach I ever met was Dave Redding, the Red Man, who played football in Nebraska. He went to Missouri with Warren Powers when he took the job in '78, and he was gung ho, sort of a country guy, the big strapping. He was sort of a all male football guy. Had a chew in his mouth. Probably had a big pickup truck and was just would get on those guys and but he was like a coach in the weight room, and so
Mhm.
yeah, that to me was the image of strength coaches were like Dave Redding, who were very competent, very enthusiastic, yelling at people in the weight room, going around slapping on their backs and being like a Marine drill sergeant yelling at in their ear and so forth. I then I met Boyd Epley, and I thought he was like a PR guy. I thought he was a guy who he was like a salesman, and which was
Yeah.
great. I never ever saw Boyd Epley raise his voice, and he used to hold press conferences in August. Everybody, okay,
He
this is the
did.
day we all go to see Boyd. That last Tuesday in August before let's go get all the summer test results.
Right.
It was like talking to a scientist. It was like
Yeah.
it was so. Um, they come in all shapes and sizes, and it's just fun to see. But I think a lot of these kids now are getting really good instruction early. I mean,
Mhm.
they're coming to college and they're coming out of high school with all this stuff. High school weight rooms now are big, and there's a lot of good instruction. There's a lot of people out there who know this stuff, and arguably Boyd Epley started it all. But so yeah, I think and I think a lot of kids now do nutrition on their own. There's so much out there on the internet. There's the personal coaches and trainers, and it's a whole different world. So yeah, I guy like Campbell is like, you know, he's in charge of it. It's a big business, and so, but what a feeling to be in charge of a brand new weight room, and I'm sure it's got all the toys and all the bells and whistles, which I hope he got to help order. I think a lot of the stuff in the new building was ordered by Frost and his staff, and you just wonder if it was if these guys, if the staff likes what they're getting, or if they would have done it differently, or I mean, like I said, I got a little when I went to interview Rhule for the Father's Day column. I walked a mile to get to his office,
Yeah.
and I felt like, gosh, this is too big. Um, I think Coach like Rhule wants everybody hanging out around his office. He want everybody, there, somebody brought brownies. Somebody's over here telling stories, and they're all walking by. Somebody's mom and dad's walking by, or here come these players, and they're all hanging out, talking. It's a one big family living room, and this is um this is like uh something out of a space movie. I mean, it's just huge hallways, and it's like Star Wars or something. You walk through
Yeah.
all, and so it's a little different. And but yeah, I felt like I feel like Billy Tubbs, where he used to talk so much and ramble, where he said, "What was the question again? What were we talking about?"
The support
Strength
staff and the straight
coaches.
staff. Yeah, no, the weight room and all
The
that. Yeah,
last
Matt Rhule does
podcast in
not.
June, I'm losing my mind.
Matt,
Um,
I don't think Matt Rhule wants that office where it is, but his predecessor did.
I know what I was saying. I don't know. I walked into a room. Keith Mann took me into the the walkthrough room. It's
Yeah.
giant. It's like an indoor football complex. It has a football field on it. Only it's like a half a field, and on the wall is the biggest sports bar you've ever seen. These giant TV screens, and he told me that this is where they go to walk through, and they can show videos and plays up on that screen while they're walking through. And it was designed by Frost, and I don't know where there was a Chip Kelly creation or what, or maybe Frost came up with it,
I
but
think it's
it's a hell of
novel.
a
Yeah,
deal.
I think it's yeah.
It's I mean, I'm sure that they like being able to have this life-size video, as big as the wall, where they could see, plays and what they should be running. So, um, yeah, it's a little different than the Friday night walkthrough. We go on the road, and me and Lee Barfbeck and Eric Olson. Well, where are we going to dinner? Well, we're going here, but first we got to go by the stadium. We got to go by KU Stadium because Nebraska's walking through Friday night under the lights. So we stopped by the walkthrough and you know make sure everybody made the trip and all that stuff. And they're just out there walking around, kind of jogging. And I remember I went to Oklahoma walkthrough one time, and Barry Switzer was up in his office, and he wasn't even there. And the offensive linemen were out running pass patterns. I mean, they were just jacking around, having fun, and they only beat Missouri by 70 the next day. So, um, but walkthroughs have changed. Walkthroughs
They
now,
have.
High
Those
tech,
linemen
you
caught
know.
about as many passes as the receivers for Oklahoma.
I don't think Barry Switzer would understand that it's kind of walkthroughs.
No.
I don't think Tony Casillas or
Uh,
any of those guys would understand this, but
oh my God. Yeah,
that's
those
the
teams were.
deal. I don't know how we got here, Sam. I don't know
No,
where
it's
we're going.
good.
Help me out.
No, that's yeah. Barry Switzer's anytime he makes it into a podcast, it's a good one.
Oh, I could do those. Just give me a few weeks off. I'll be back.
No, those are great. Quickly on recruiting, Nebraska has 11 right now, 11 commits. It's probably fewer than I expected them to have at this point, maybe fewer than what they wanted at this point. I'm sure they felt good about going after a couple of guys who have chosen to commit elsewhere. The name in there that's notable is Dawson Merritt. He was a linebacker from Kansas City. His dad is the defensive backs coach for the Chiefs, and he picked Alabama over Nebraska. And I thought Nebraska had a really good chance of getting him because Alabama is not Alabama from last year. But Alabama was able to win that battle. Kalen DeBoer comes into the Midwest and gets that. And so Nebraska finishes second there. There's a couple other guys that Nebraska didn't get. I don't know if those are quite as big of a deal. Broderick Scholl went to Auburn. He was an offensive lineman. John Mills, who I think is really good, but probably wasn't coming to Nebraska, went to Texas. It is very, very hard. This is historically a fact. It's very, very hard for Nebraska to get offensive linemen from the West Coast because they don't want to come to Nebraska. And that goes all the way back to the Osborne era, too. Yes, Brendan Stye came from California, but a lot of them won't do it. They won't. They want to stay somewhere warm, and they want to stay out west. And so historically, it's been hard for Nebraska to get linemen from the West Coast, and they've struck out on a few there. Guy from Bishop Gorman is going to Tennessee. There was a decommit. Brian Tapu decommitted from Oregon State. He may go to Nebraska. He's in the Salt Lake City area, I believe. So we'll see what happens with recruiting. My sense of this is always kind of the same. The recruiting people who cover recruiting are almost always publicly going to say, well, the class is good. The coach is always going to say, well, the class is exactly what we want, because what are they going to say? Outside of Charlie Weiss, I don't remember anybody saying that the recruiting class wasn't very good. And so they're going to say it's good. And most of the time, these classes are not that different from most other classes in college football. Nebraska may be ranked higher than Iowa, but if you look at the way that the recruiting classes are scored, they're basically the same. The differences are those top 5 or 6 classes in the country. Those classes are different, and they tend to have much better players and tend to produce better teams. And Ohio State currently is number 1. So what I pay attention to is how, let's say there's like 10 guys that Nebraska's after. They're in the top 100. How did they do with those guys in the top 100? Well, I think last year Nebraska got 3 of them: Dylan Raiola, Grant Bricks, and Carter Nelson. This year so far, they haven't gotten any of them. And so I tend to gauge how they do with their top 10 guys on their board that everybody would want. And then everybody after that, you get a guy, maybe he's 6'2" instead of 6'3", but you know what? You can turn him into a good football player. So I think Nebraska's doing okay, but with the very top guys on their board, they haven't done great yet. And so that'll be something to watch. 5-star receiver Michael Terry is out there, and he's still, considering Nebraska and Oregon and Texas. There's still names out there to watch. So I'm always kind of looking for that very, very best player. And one of the things that's true about recruiting is that back in the 80s and the early 90s, you didn't have these kind of recruiting lists. But if we had, and Alan Wallace and Max Emfinger and other people were putting out, top 100 lists that everybody could see and look at on the internet, I think you would have found names like Broderick Thomas and Neil Smith. And certainly, all of the running backs, Calvin Jones and Tommy Frazier was like the number 1 guy in the country. Even in the Osborne era, they recruited really, really good players who helped build really, really good teams. I know they developed well, and they had 330 guys on the team, but Neil Smith and Broderick Thomas were a big reason why Nebraska was good in the 80s. And those guys were not the 319th recruit in the country. So Top players still matter, and we'll see how Nebraska does with those guys. Tom, do you have any thoughts on recruiting?
Yeah, I just two reasons I'm not too worried about it is the transfer portal. It's
Right.
it's the great eraser. It changes it, if you don't get a guy now, you might get him in 2 years. I mean,
And they're trying to get a
but
transfer right now. Sierra
I
Wright,
mean,
USC
I
cornerback.
mean,
They're trying to get him.
I mean, so it's you can't get all broken up about that and worry about rankings because it's the 4 year window is not fluid and a lot of things can happen. But and the guy you really wanted, you might find out, hey, he wasn't that good, and then he must have come back. Well, we'll see. But no, I think that once again, right now we're still Nebraska's still talk, and it's great. Dylan Raiola is not talk. He's there. He's very much alive, and I mean he's got a presence. He's bringing people in, but they need a spark. They need to win, and we need to see what it's like. We need to remember again what it's like when they win. What's it like? Certainly there were wins with uh Mike Riley won one year. Bo Pelini had some winning years, but consistently and knocking off top teams, they need that moment, that big win at home. The place needs to kind of catch on fire a little bit, have an inspirational moment, and then let the fans take over. Let the people show you what it's all about. And this place is different around the state. Uh, Everything's different. Attitudes, mood, money, the economy. Everything is different when you're winning in football in Nebraska. And uh, recruits have no idea that they weren't born, they weren't even around. They have heck the people, their parents barely remember right now. So, watch some of these West Coast guys. When Nebraska gets going, if they get going here, and it could be the USC or they'll start turning some heads on the West Coast. It won't take long, and people want to be around, Dylan Raiola if they start winning, and it's the fans they'll want to be here. So um, that transfer portal may get real interesting if they start winning. You'll have guys who won't want to leave, and you'll have a lot of guys who want to come. So it's but that's what we're waiting for. We're waiting for that moment. Where is it this year? Is it Colorado? Is it USC? Is it Wisconsin? Is it I don't think it'll be Ohio State, but I mean, why not?
No, you
I've
got to be Colorado. Don't you got it? I mean, they got it.
Yeah, right. But I'm just saying
That's
there,
a
there's
must.
there's there's moments out there waiting to be had. But yeah, I think Colorado's got to be the first one.
Yeah,
So, um,
big one.
but
I'm sure you could have a good season and lose to them, but
right now,
not going to happen.
they haven't won the first game.
No,
I
it
mean
happens, but
that
yes.
Evan brought that up a while ago, and it's a
No, it's a
great
good
point.
point. That's
They
right.
haven't won the first game. They haven't won the opener, and
That's very true. Yeah.
I
They
don't
haven't
remember the
since
last one.
2019. Yeah, it's a heck of a good point.
Um, because so let's do that, and then yeah, you get Colorado and a night game. I mean, that could be the moment. I mean,
Could be.
we'll see. But yeah, recruiting. Uh, they're getting guys they want. They're building. They're, coaches get in a hurry. They want the real big guys. But until you prove it, sometimes it's hard to get those guys. So um, I think this year, next year, the next 2 years will be really, really big for okay. Here's who we are. Here's who we're going to be. So
Yeah. I mean, we'll talk many times about the Colorado game. Um, I keep trying to remind people, whatever you think of Deion Sanders, his son is really good. And it's not a joke. That kid's going to be in the NFL for many years. Um,
Hey,
Deion is not running a great program, but his son is dang good. And he
but,
carved up Nebraska last year.
until they beat him, they haven't beaten him.
That's right.
Right?
Like,
I mean,
Nebraska sacked him 9 times, I think, and he carved him up anyway. So
right.
he's a special player.
So let's just go into that game and see what happens. But
Yeah.
I beat UTEP first, and but that's the game that Adrian Martinez never had. He never had that first game. He had to go right in and play Colorado the second game. He never got that. That first UTEP game will be very important for everybody, Rhule and everybody. But anyway, it's June. We're talking football, and
Nothing wrong with that.
I'll be back at the end of July. I'm not going to go to Indy, but I'll be here watching, and all that stuff's coming up really, really quick.
Pick Six will take a break next week. Myself and Evan and Tom will all be on vacation, so we will. I don't know. We'll catch up at some point and have a preview of Big Ten Media Days, but things are about to get quiet around Nebraska Athletics, or we certainly hope so, for the next 3 weeks. So enjoy your summer vacation, Husker fans. For Tom and Sam, well, I'm Sam. For Tom, I'm Sam. Thanks for listening to the Pick Six podcast.